Hi, I'm Sam and this is Red Carpet Talk. Normally I do short reviews on TikTok, Instagram, and my YouTube channel here for movies, usually around 1 minute or so. Today I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to do a longer format video. And today we're doing a Q&A. I told people to give me questions from a variety of places, so I'm going to be answering everybody's questions related to Oscar season. Technically, you could say it's the beginning of Oscar season now, but some people will argue that the beginning of Oscar season starts in May now because of the Cannes Film Festival. And since 2019 with Parasite, a lot of the movies that win the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival end up being Best Picture noms. So I'm going to talk about Oscar season, but I'm also going to be discussing my experience at New York Film Festival, which people had questions about. And since a lot of the movies on that lineup are Oscar contenders now. So this is going to be a fun discussion. So the first question I have is a very common question that's all pop up. The New York Film Festival movie that I liked more than I expected going in, there's two of them. One of them is J. Kelly. I expected it to be around a 7 out of 10 for me. The movie I ended up having a very interesting experience since when I first left the movie or was watching the movie, my gut was telling me an 8 out of 10, but then I started overthinking it a bit and then I gave it a 6 out of 10 in my short review. But now that I'm doing this video, I've thought about the movie for more and reflected on it more. And I feel like it's a very solid, self-aware dramedy about Hollywood and superficiality and performativity. It's a hard movie to assess and approach and rate because it's a movie that presents itself like a formulaic Hollywood, old school Hollywood movie, but it's not because it's directed by a director who I guess you can consider an auteur of sorts, Noah Baumbach. And so because of that, he is purposely falling into presenting the movie as a cliche, generic Hollywood old school movie. The score itself plays on that. Nicholas Britell's score plays on that. This is a much different score than we're used to hearing in Succession or If Beale Street Could Talk or Andor. It's very much more traditional score. It's very lavish and feels very European, which goes with the movie at times. And I think George Clooney's performance is very solid. Going in, I was worried he was going to be solely reliant on his charisma. This is a movie where he's not solely reliant on his charisma. And I think the best way to approach it or describe it, it's hard, is kind of like May-December. It's somewhat similar to May-December in The Matrix. And what I mean by that is May-December was a movie that was making fun of trashy Lifetime movies. This movie is very much it's not making fun, but it's very much presented like an old school Hollywood film. But the way I think it differs from May-December, and I think it's more similar to The Matrix, is The Matrix is a movie that presents itself as a fun action blockbuster that if you want to turn your brain off, you can. But if you want a philosophical sci-fi movie that makes you think with social commentary, you also have that as well. So I think this movie presents itself as an old school traditional Hollywood movie, but it also makes you think about, it's very meta and you can go very deep into the rabbit hole of just performativity with this as a whole. The second movie that I liked more than I expected was La Grazia, which is an Italian movie about an older politician reflecting on his time as president. I heard going into the festival this was a boring movie. So I was expecting a boring movie. This was more funny than I expected it to be honest. And I also was more interested in the main character than I expected to be. I hear a lot of people criticizing the main character and saying he's not really that interesting. I disagree. I thought his internal struggles was compelling to me. And I liked the way the film approached it. So those are my two movies I liked more than I expected. So this is another question that I kept on getting. Um, the Cannes Film Festival's top prize every year is the Palme d'Or, and this year's Palme d'Or winner was It Was Just an Accident, and it was a very hyped international film. This is an Iranian dramedy, and it's interesting that this movie is being hyped up so much. Since last year, there was another Iranian film, Seed of the Sacred Fig, that I adored, and I saw it twice in theaters since I loved it so much. Once at New York Film Festival and one on my own, since I just really wanted to support the film. So going from like Seed of the Sacred Fig to this, it's very interesting that this is the Iranian movie that's being hyped. Since I wanted, the way It Was Just an Accident is being hyped up, I wanted that for Seed of the Sacred Fig. It did get nominated for Best International Feature, but it didn't win because it lost to I'm Still Here. So that's all the context for me going into It Was Just an Accident. Oh, also some more context to add, actually, that I nearly forgot about, is this movie's directed by Jafar Panahi, and I had already seen a couple films directed by either him or his son, one of them being Offside, which I adore. It's one of my favorite sports films of all time, and it gets often overlooked as a sports film because it is an international film, but I think it's a very subversive sports movie. So I went in being a fan of him as a director. But when I watched the movie, I don't know if it was because it just had bad captioning or the movie itself didn't work for me. So I saw other people in the theater who were laughing a lot throughout, but for me, I feel the tonal balance between drama and comedy just didn't hit as well, which is a bit disappointing since I really wanted to love this movie. And I like the themes that's being tackled, but the execution of the movie just didn't work for me. And Seed of the Sacred Fig is also a drama with comedy scattered at certain times, but it's not necessarily a laugh out loud movie. And I feel like that movie did the tonal balance better. So unfortunately, It Was Just an Accident is my movie for this question. So for the next three questions, I'm going to answer the same movie for all three questions. Pillion, because that was just my favorite movie of the overall festival. But in regards to screening experience as a whole, this movie, I was at the New York premiere, and there was a Q&A afterwards with Alexander Skarsgård and their director. And this was a very fun movie from like the moment I arrived in the lobby waiting to get in. You could see a lot of the gay community just showed up in the best way possible. And there was even people who I felt might have even been part of the biker community that's being talked about in the movie. There was a lot of people dressed up in different outfits than you normally see at the New York Festival. There was a lot more leather for this screening than usual. And Skarsgård had a leather jacket. I know he wore like this beautiful pair of boots. And the director just showed up and his look was totally serving. He was wearing a black leather kilt, and his legs were amazing. I was just so, and those two had so much fun during the Q&A, and there was so much playful banter during that Q&A that I loved. Skarsgård was teasing the director, and honestly, these kind of festivals can be kind of pretentious. So to have a movie to like lighten the mood that was with a sense of humor to like get everybody to stop being like so serious was much needed in my opinion. So as I said before, Pillion is my answer for 3 questions in a row. This is the second out of 3 questions where I'm going to answer Pillion. So Pillion surprised me the most because, truth be told, going into the movie, I was aware that the trailer dropped, but I purposely didn't watch it since I was trying to go into the premiere as blind as possible, not knowing much information about the movie. So I was honestly really surprised by the fact that it was more of a rom-com than an artsy erotic thriller. I think when I first heard the logline months ago when this project was announced, I think me and other people as well were expecting more of another movie that Alexander Skarsgård did, Infinity Pool, which was leaned into the erotic thriller subgenre at times. But this movie is very much a subversive rom-com. I put a lot of emphasis on subversive. This is in no way a cliche rom-com, and I love the way it plays with the tropes of a rom-com. And honestly, the overall message of this movie is very refreshing when you compare it to most rom-coms that you see. I think this is a way better executed version of a movie like Bros. I feel like this Bros was trying to be like the gay rom-com that we all like root for, and it's not a bad movie, but it is a bit cliche at times. This doesn't feel cliche in the way that Bros did. So that's why it's like my favorite movie of the festival. So this is the third question that I'm answering with Pillion, and insightful can be approached in one of two ways. So for me, insightful can mean a Q&A that makes you learn something new about the movie that you didn't know before. My second interpretation of insightful is a Q&A that enlightens you and makes you approach the world differently, or just look at the world differently than you did before. So in regards to the first interpretation, the director, Henry Lighton, he went in depth on specific changes that he made to the film as an adaptation compared to the original book, and people were very happy about those changes and clapped there was a lot of applause for when they heard that those changes were made. And since I wasn't familiar with the book already, and then this, in regards to second interpretation of insightful, I thought it was just super cool to see a conventional leading man like Alexander Skarsgård, who's very handsome, just be so secure in his masculinity while promoting a gay rom-com like this that is risky. And it was just so cool to see that. And not only was it just cool to see that from him, but it was also cool to hear at the end of the Q&A, the moderator asked a question about his father's reaction to the movie, since his father also had another movie in the New York Film Festival lineup, Sentimental Value, and Stellan Skarsgård is really good in that movie. So to hear that Stellan Skarsgård liked Pillion, and to hear a father be so accepting also was very enlightening for me. So that's my answer to this question. Okay, so there's one movie from this year's New York Film Festival lineup that I don't think it's distribution yet, but that I liked, and I'm a bit worried about it. The movie's called Late Fame. It's with Willem Dafoe and Greta Lee. Willem Dafoe, I think most people are already familiar with his previous filmography, so I don't need to hype him up further. And Greta Lee, her breakout, I guess you could say, was Past Lives, and she's done other TV roles outside of that. I think it's the season of Greta Lee, and I've heard other people use that term, so I'm using that term. She is in Late Fame, House of Dynamite, which were both in the New York Film Festival lineup, and then she also did Tron Ares, which I know was technically a box office flop, but I personally loved her as an action heroine, and all of that was happening in the same month, which I think is crazy. I'm glad to see her get work post Past Lives, and she's solid in this movie. Originally, Sandra Holler was cast in a role. I like Sandra Holler in Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest. I'm sorry, but Greta Lee was the one who needed to do this role. She gives such nuance to the character that can easily be one note. And from what I heard, it's based on a novella, I believe. And I hear the character is slightly more one note in the book. So I'm glad Sammy Birch, who adapted this, who I think deserves credit for the screenplay. She also did May December. I think Sammy Birch is a writer that people should look out for more going forward. Another person in this movie I think people should look out for more going forward is Edmund Donovan. He has a supporting role in this movie. Basically, Willem Dafoe is a post office worker who used to be a poet, and Edmund Donovan's character discovers his work, and he becomes famous later in life, technically, with this guy. And I don't want to explain the rest of the plot right now, but Edmund Donovan in particular is really solid in this movie. I am familiar with him since I saw him in Your Monster, which is a Melissa Barrera movie, and Melissa Barrera and him and other cast members did a Q&A for that movie. So I hope to see him in more stuff going forward since he's very solid. Yeah. So now we're transitioning from New York Film Festival to more so Oscar movies in general. A lot of the movies I saw on the New York Film Festival lineup I think are going to be considered for different Oscar categories like Best Picture, International Feature, but also the acting categories as well. So starting with like Best Picture, you have the neon contenders. You have movies like It Was Just an Accident, which won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and then the second biggest award at Cannes was won by Sentimental Value. So those two have a legitimate shot of both getting nominated, since in recent years you have like movies like Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest, which are both international films, getting in the same year. Anatomy of a Fall has an asterisk since Anatomy of a Fall was not nominated for International Feature, even though it is an international film. And last year you had Emilia Perez and I'm Still Here, both nominated for Best Picture in the same year. So I think it's possible both Sentimental Value and It Was Just an Accident get in the same year. Neon also has other international features like No Other Choice, which I didn't see, but when I went to a premiere for one movie, I did see, as I was leaving, I did see the director Park Chan-wook of No Other Choice there, as well as the lead actor of that movie, who's in Squid Game and K-Pop Demon Hunters. So those are a couple neon contenders that I think you need to watch out for in Best Picture. And then Netflix-wise, I saw House of Dynamite and Jay Kelly. I think Jay Kelly is the more likely of the two movies to get in. Both are flashy in the sense that they have celebrities. However, Jay Kelly has a true leading man with George Clooney, whereas House of Dynamite doesn't really have a traditional main character at all. It's very much so an ensemble piece. And I don't think the reception leaving New York Film Festival is as positive for House of Dynamite as it was at Venice. So I think that's going to work against the film, unfortunately, even though I loved House of Dynamite. And then I didn't see the secret screening of Marty Supreme, but that is a solid Best Picture contender that you have to watch out for. This year, going into the season, people were joking, Battle of the Safdie brothers, and you have Benny Safdie directing Smashing Machine, which did not do as well box office wise as people thought it was going to, even though The Rock's in it. And then you have Timothée Chalamet and Josh Safdie's Marty Supreme, and unless what happened to Smashing Machine, since Smashing Machine was at Venice and received like a lot of positive reception, and then now it's starting to get more mixed reception with The Rock's performance as well as the movie itself. So the same could happen theoretically with Marty Supreme, since right now Marty Supreme is like at New York Film Festival. It's one of the first times people are seeing this movie. So with time, it's possible it could get more mixed feedback as well. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think keep an eye on Marty Supreme for now. Regarding international feature, Neon has bought so many international feature contenders at Cannes this year. It's crazy. And it was just an accident and Sentimental Value, which I think are definitely getting in for international feature. The question now is, what is going to be those other 3 slots? And it's very complicated, because if Neon owns at least 3 other movies, which I haven't seen yet, like Surratt, No Other Choice, and Secret Agent, that could theoretically get in, how are they going to campaign for this category when you have at least 5 movies? Some people are predicting that all 5 are somehow going to get in, which I find crazy. If so, it'd be a battle of the Neon movies, which would be absolutely insane. So we'll see what ends up happening with that category. And then you have the acting categories. I think there's a possibility where George Clooney gets in over like a Michael B. Jordan for Sinners. The way Margot didn't get in for Barbie, I think that could happen with Michael B. Jordan. And then you have Jake Kelly getting in. You have Leo for One Battle After Another getting nominated, with Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme, and The Rock getting in for Smashing Machine. And then there could be like an international movie that somehow gets in, like Wagner Moura for Secret Agent, the way Fernando Torres got in for another Brazilian movie last year for I'm Still Here. So we'll see what ends up happening with that category. I think Jay Kelly could end up snubbing Michael B. Jordan, so we'll see. I don't like the performance as much as other people, but I'm just bringing it up as a possible possibility. And then you have other acting categories like lead actress. After Hunt was technically the opening movie of New York Film Festival. I didn't watch it opening night. I watched it the next day, technically outside of the festival. But Julia Roberts, even though the movie was getting mixed reception, Julia Roberts is getting a lot of praise, so you can't rule her out. However, I think Renate Reinsve for Sentimental Value is the stronger contender of the ones I've seen, who is definitely getting in for lead actress. I adore Sentimental Value, and I love the actresses, including her in that movie. This is following Worst Person in the World. It's the same director, and she's teaming up with him again. And her performance in here is even better than Worst Person in the World, in my opinion, and it's more emotional. And I liked Worst Person in the World, but I think Sentimental Value is an even better movie. And Stellan Skarsgård who's also in Sentimental Value, is probably going to get in for supporting. And then you also have Adam Sandler for Jay Kelly, maybe. I don't know. He's kind of like he's similar to J-Lo, where J-Lo, people like talk for movies like Selena and Hustlers. They're like, and even this year with Kiss of a Spider Woman, is J-Lo going to get in? Same thing happens with like Adam Sandler. Like, is Adam Sandler going to get in for Uncut Gems? I don't know. Maybe he'll get in for Jay Kelly. We'll see. So this is another very common question right now. People especially want to know the frontrunners for the acting categories. I'm going to start by just talking as a whole for the overall Oscars. What are the frontrunners? I think Warner Brothers, hands down, is the frontrunner for when you're talking about all the categories as a whole right now. They got One Battle After Another and Sinners, which are both going to probably be nominated for Best Picture. If they're not, I would be shocked at this point in time. And One Battle After Another is going to definitely be nominated for Adapted Screenplay, since it's an adaptation of Vineland, I believe. And then other categories like editing, the inaugural award for casting. This is the first year they're doing a casting award, and the ensemble in One Battle After Another is great. So that ensemble is probably gonna win that award. And then directing, of course. In recent years, you've had people like Nolan finally win an Oscar for directing for Oppenheimer. And Sean Baker, even though he's more of an indie director, people loved his other movies. Like, I know he's one of my favorite directors. I love Florida Project and Tangerine and Red Rocket, and people were happy he finally won for Anora, even if it wasn't their favorite film of his from filmography. So I can definitely see Paul Thomas Anderson. He is hands down a frontrunner for director right now, and he's probably going to win it, since this is a really good movie, and it's one of his most personal movies he's ever done. And then with Sinners, I said it was going to be nominated for Best Picture. Right now, it's a front runner for score. You got Ludwig reunited with Ryan Coogler doing another score with him. Whenever there's a Ryan Coogler movie, Ludwig usually does the score. And a lot of people consider Sinners his best of his scores. I don't know if I agree with that statement, but you can't rule Ludwig out right now for Sinners. And then you have the other categories. As I said before, people especially want to know about acting. It's hard this time of year because usually the most talked about contenders are usually the more celebrity choices rather than the actual winners. Or just like often, like last year you had Selena Gomez with Emilia Perez, who people were like, oh, is she going to get in for supporting actress? And she's more known for music nowadays, even though she started in sitcoms. People, not me, but a decent amount of people view her as a musician first. So I think that this time around, you see kind of like Ariana Grande, who also got her start in sitcoms, except on Nickelodeon. She is being considered for Wicked for Good. You have The Rock, who is more known, who got a start in wrestling, being considered for Smashing Machine. And then Adam Sandler is kind of going out of his realm. Even though he has done some more dramatic roles, he's more known for comedy overall, and he's being considered for Jay Kelly. And you have like the more flashy movie star choices that people are talking about the most. Like even DiCaprio is a movie star of sorts, and he's being talked about for One Battle After Another. But I don't know if he's going to win, because you're hearing so much buzz with Timothée Chalamet right now, with Marty Supreme. Again, we need to see if the good reception remains that way going forward. But if this movie is as good as people are saying, this might be the one where Timothée Chalamet finally wins the Oscar, which would be crazy. He's 30, so he wouldn't be the youngest. That's still Adrian Brody, but he's still on the younger side for Best Actor winners if he does get it for this. And then for actress, Jessie Buckley is hands down the Best Actress frontrunner right now for Hamnet, which is an adaptation of a beloved book. I hear the movie is slow, as you expect from a Chloe Zhao movie, but also the book is slow from what I've heard from people who've read it, so it's expected. But great movie that's moving people to tears right now from what I've been hearing. So I'm excited to see Jessie Buckley's performance, especially with this as a solid year for female performances when you have, I'm not going to name every single female performance, but in recent memory, I've been seeing movies like Sentimental Value with Renate Reinsve, and If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You has an amazing performance with Rose Byrne. So I thought those were solid. So if Jessie Buckley wins for Hamnet and it's just as good of a performance as those other movies I've seen, I'm very excited. Then you have like other categories. I think, as I mentioned before, international feature, it's hard to bet against the Palme d'Or winner right now. So right now I give It Was Just an Accident a slight edge, but I think the tide could change and Sentimental Value could get in over it. I think for K-pop Demon Hunters, that's a big contender right now for animated and song. I would be very excited to see that get an Oscar for either of those categories. But recent years, the animated movie has usually gone to more like artsy films rather than Disney blockbusters. So I don't know if it's gonna necessarily win that, and so I'm nervous, but I'm cautiously optimistic that the momentum is gonna stay, since Netflix is putting a ton of money behind this K-pop Demon Hunter campaign, and the voice actors and the singers are everywhere right now doing a ton of interviews. So you can't rule K-pop Demon Hunters out right now. It's such a cultural phenomenon. And then the last category I want to talk about frontrunners for is documentary. For documentary, you have Cover Up is, I think, the frontrunner right now. Cover Up is directed by the same director as, I think Laura Poitras is her name. She's the same director as All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which I liked, and she won for a few years ago. She's a frontrunner right now, but there's other documentaries that you can't rule out right now that I'm hearing about, like Perfect Neighbor, which was also a New York Film Festival in addition to Cover Up. I hear that's a really solid movie. It's tough though. And then give me a second while I remember the other movie, since it's a complicated title, so just please give me a second while I try to remember it. 2,000 Meters to Andrivica. Sorry I hadn't looked at my notes for it, but Andrivica is not a conventional American name, so I had to look it up real quick. That movie is another director that has won for Best Documentary in recent years. So you can't rule that movie out. And then you also have one final movie, Orwell 2 + 2 = 5. That's another director that hasn't won, but he's been nominated for Best Documentary in the past. So you can't rule that movie out. Those are the 4 main movies I've been hearing about for Best Documentary right now. But right now, the slight edge goes to Cover Up. So this is the final question. Here are some upcoming movies that I think people should look out for. Some of these are movies that I've seen already, and then others are movies that I haven't seen yet, but I'm excited for. So I'm going to start with Sentimental Value. Sentimental Value, as I said before, I think it's better than Worst Person in the World, which was a very solid movie. The performances from the female cast just blew me away. This has one of my favorite scenes of the year, not an exaggeration. And I'm going to be thinking about this movie for a bit. That's a common theme with a lot of the movies for this Oscar season, is I'm going to be thinking about that for a bit and need to process it and dissect it. We also have House of Dynamite. House of Dynamite, I think the structure worked for some people better than others. I know at Venice, people were praising it. The 3-part structure, like the Kurosawa movie Rashomon. And then with New York Film Festival, the structure didn't work for people as much. For me, it worked. And I think the structure makes sense. I like the social commentary. Some people are some people are criticizing the social commentary, and I don't necessarily agree with those criticisms, since I think there's a reason behind it, but I don't want to spoil too much for House of Dynamite. And then the other movie that I've seen already that I'm excited for other people to see is Blue Moon. I thought Ethan Hawke was amazing, and I'm kind of bummed he might not even get a Best Actor nom for this, since I thought he was amazing. I hope it at least gets like a makeup or hair nomination, because this movie's so good. It just, I loved it. If you're a musical theater fan and you want to learn more about the history, even if you're not, I know there's people who aren't interested in musical theater as much as me who like this movie, and it's such a good small scale movie that is just, very well done. Richard Linklater directed this, and he also has another movie coming out this year, Nouvelle Vague, that I'm looking forward to. This is going to be in black and white. From what I'm hearing, it's a hangout movie. I feel like Richard Linklater is best when he plays with time, or he does like a small story mostly set in like one location or one day. Those are some of his best movies, in my opinion. And what makes him special as a director. And so it's interesting to see what he does with Nouvelle Vague, touching on such an iconic movie in film history like the French movie Breathless. So and he's reuniting with Zoe Dutch in that, who he worked with on Everybody Wants Some. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Then there's a couple other movies that I have that I'm supposed to see either today or next week. Like, I'm supposed to see Begonia tonight. I'm a huge Yorgos fan. I love most of his movies. And I think him and Emma Stone are interesting as a actor-director collaboration. They don't make generic projects. They make very interesting, unique, weird, out there projects. And the trailer sold me on the sense of humor of this movie. It seems similar to movies like The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer. In regards to the setting, is more contemporary rather than like Poor Things and The Favorite, which are more period pieces. And Jesse Plemons, I hear, is really good. I'm hearing some buzz for performances from both of them, Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons, right now for the acting categories. So we'll see. Poor Things managed to get nominated, and so if that could get in, then Begonia could too. Who knows at this point with the Academy. And then next week, speaking of Sean Baker, I brought up Sean Baker earlier for when I was talking about the Best Director category. Sean Baker, I don't think many people realize, he has a movie that he co-wrote and he's an editor for, called Left-Handed Girl. I'm supposed to see that next week. I'm excited for that. Again, he's not the director, but he is credited for those other things I mentioned. So it's an international movie that I'm looking forward to. And then there's just like other Oscar movies like Hamnet. I'm trying to think. Oh, Sarat. Sarat is an international movie I'm looking forward to. Secret Agent with Wagner Moura. What else am I forgetting? No Other Choice. Testament of Anne Lee. That is one I'm looking forward to. I like Amanda Seyfried. I feel like she's kind of getting her flowers more in recent years with performances like Elizabeth Holmes in The Dropout. I think she's solid in Jennifer's Body as Needy. She has 2 movies coming out on Christmas Day this year. Testament of Anne Lee, and then The Housemaid, I think is the name of it, with Sydney Sweeney. But Testament of Anne Lee could be a late Oscar contender that just comes out of nowhere. And since Searchlight was trying to make other movies possible Best Picture nominations that just don't seem to be playing out, and I think if they play their cards correctly, they could get Testament of Anne Lee and Best Picture. The person behind it is Brady Corbet's wife. I think her name is Mona. And I loved The Brutalist last year. So if we're getting ambitious filmmaking like that with Testament of Anne Lee, I'm all in. And then, of course, there's a couple movies that are not necessarily Oscar movies, but just like ones I'm looking forward to personally, like Eternity with Elizabeth Olsen, Miles Teller, and I think Callum Turner is his name. It's an A24 movie. I think it looks like an interesting concept, so I'm looking forward to it. I like the people involved. So that one, and then also Dust Bunny, which is I think the Mads Mikkelsen horror movie, and you're either on board for that description or you're not. So those are the movies I'm looking forward to going forward. I hope you had fun with this listening to discussion and maybe learned some things along the way. Maybe I can help you with your Oscar ballot going forward. I'm definitely going to do another video next year once the nominations are out. And I'm also going to do another video for the Oscar ceremony itself. I'm planning on doing other Q&As in the future, like next month for Wicked. I was thinking of possibly doing a musicals Q&A when that movie comes out, and then in December I'm going to do my top 10 list, so I can do a Q&A for that. And if you like this video and you want to see more content from me, you can go to TikTok, Instagram, and this YouTube channel to see my short reviews on movies. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I especially want to see comments about with further questions or comments about interesting things that came to your mind while listening to this. Have a good day.